We wanted to make sure and bookend this great event with some powerful keynotes. And so our next speaker is actually our keynote. We have Mark Holland. He is the principal at EY Parthenon, and he brings more than 30 years of executive management and consulting experience with agriculture and food companies, and was quoted as saying, we love including quotes, he was quoted as saying, the AgTech industry is critical to meet the demands of a food system that is quickly being reimagined. Oh, yes, indeed. With that, we will welcome Mark Holland.
Well, I want to thank everybody for allowing me to be here today. I'm Mark Holland. I'm a principal with EY's food and agribusiness team. And I've been with the firm about 3 years. Before that, I was with a smaller boutique consulting firm focused in food and agriculture for 13 years and 10 years in the industry prior to that. I been around a while here, as you can probably figure out if you've done that math, and seen a lot of things come and go. And I love, I'm an idea person, and people will tell you that I'm the guy that it's like when they want to ideate about something, I'm typically the guy that they call about that. And so I love idea people. I really do. I love being around people that have big ideas and that have a vision and a dream. And I listened to a lot of the pitches yesterday, and just really appreciate the passion and energy and enthusiasm that people have for what they're working on. And that's just such a great thing. I wish we could bottle it and sell it. We could all make a lot of money if we could. But I love idea people. I really admire plan people that are able to make a plan and take an idea and make it real, because ideas by themselves they're just ideas. And I have those, like a lot of those every day. Most of them never become a plan. Probably a good thing, because most ideas I have are not great, but I have a lot, so that's okay. But I actually hire execution people, so people that are able to actually take a plan and then make it happen. And that's really where the rubber hits the road when it comes to either if you're in a startup or you're in an established business or you're in a business for yourself. It really doesn't matter. The ability to actually execute something is that's where real value actually comes. You can't do it without the ideas, and there's a lot of we need as many ideas as we can generate. We have way more capital than we do good ideas, that's for sure. But getting things to execution, making them real, is just a really critical piece of that puzzle. And I heard yesterday in the pitches, there were a lot of ideas, and a lot of them had really good plans, and seemed like that things are moving forward on a number of them that lead me to believe that execution will follow. I'm happy to be here and happy to be involved in this, and it's just great. One thing we do in our EY Food and Agribusiness team is we spend a lot of time thinking about the future. So since you're in startup world, well, clearly, your business is not about like right this minute. You are thinking more about the future, and so we tend to think about that a lot as well, because our clients, who are the more established players in the industry and governments and other kinds of organizations that want to know how to think about agriculture and food, we spend a lot of time thinking about that future, what's going to shape and form that future, and what can we expect. And if we're good enough, we can start to get to when. Now, when is the most difficult question to answer about the future. You can see something coming. You just can't really tell how fast oftentimes. I will say in general, in agriculture, we are bound by a biological cycle, if you think about it. And so we tend to get into a cadence of this annual cycle. And it's such a big part of our lives that we, even just subconsciously, it feels like the world operates at that pace. The reality is that agriculture is bound by that biological cycle, but the rest of the world is not. And if a farmer is fortunate, they get 40 opportunities to fail. I mean, they get 40 crops, right? So they can try things. Whereas in the rest of the world, somebody can experiment and try things. They can maybe fail 40 times in a week or a month or maybe even a day, depending on what they're doing. And that's a big deal. That's a big gap. And where those two time differences try to come together, if you think about agriculture being this big gear that's turning at a slower rate of RPM, and then these little smaller ones, where those come together and there's not a transmission, there's a lot of friction. And we've seen that. Some of what you guys are working on that I heard will create friction. And it will be important to understand where your innovation fits within the overall system, would be my opinion. Because the little wheel turning really fast cannot really influence the big wheel unless there's a transmission and unless there's a way to make those two things come together and for them to work. So we think about the future. There are some big drivers here. So technology, human augmentation, automation, things like that. That's a big driver of our lives today. We see it in every other part of our life, right? And it is setting expectations for how we want to do things. I remember recently, in the last year, it's been difficult for all of us, I'm sure, but I was watching some television show. I wasn't having to watch it with commercials. And so I watched the whole first season without commercials. And then I realized I had to watch the second season, but if I did, I had to actually have commercials. And I literally chose not to watch it because I wasn't going to tolerate commercials anymore. So here's a 55-year-old guy who watched television his whole life with commercials and who in a very short period of time decided that commercials are no longer acceptable. That's actually a pretty big change. And technology just does that to us, like a lot, changes our expectations, even subconsciously. And it can happen very quickly. Globalization's a big deal. Obviously, China, a big country, lots of people trying to figure out how they have food security. I can't tell you over the last year, how many sovereign governments I've been on the phone with who are rethinking their food security strategy. Most of them have been oil producing countries who see an end to their income stream and who know they're going to have to think about food very differently going forward. Are we going to do that on a nationalized basis? Are we going to do that on a regional basis? Are we going to have a global trade system of sorts where that works? That's what we have today. All big deal. Most of you folks are a lot younger than me, but demographics are a big deal. And so we've got a whole Future Consumer Now group that studies intensely the decision habits, the buying habits of these different groups or ages of people. And I will tell you, there's not a group that's more different than the rest of us than the Gen Zs. I have 3 children, 30, 27, and about to be 19. I will tell you, there's a really big difference between that last one and those first two, just in terms of how they think. And when the Gen Zs are going to be making a lot of decisions over the next 2 decades, and they're just not going to make them the way that we have, but the boomers did, or my generation for sure. And then, we are really concerned about the environment and the planet, and it's a major driver of policy and even innovation. There are a lot of the people that have made a lot of money in technology over the last decade or two. This is like they've decided is their life's work, is to attempt to save the planet and use the many tens of billions of dollars that they've made to change the outcome, and they are putting their money where their mouth is. And I do believe they are going to be putting their influence where their mouth is as well. And one of the things that is in the crosshairs of that group is agriculture and how food is created. And so, we're seeing that in spades with whether it's alternative proteins or just trying to get people to change how they eat in general. Um, you go to that next level here on the slide that I'm sharing. The expectations of people are changing, as I mentioned. I think we've all probably experienced more home delivery of groceries, as an example, or home delivery of prepared foods over the last year. We are, what we want. We want what we want, and we want it the way we want it. And it really is a significant driver, if you will. And we've built this system that we have in food and agriculture for standardization. And we're moving much more to a customized or more personal type approach. And that's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. But also, then we are understanding more and more. I think we're still in the infancy on this, to be candid, is my personal opinion, but I think that we will continue to understand more the connection between health and food. And, what do I need as Mark Holland, based on my, ability to process glucose or starches or carbohydrates or protein? What it would be the right or the perfect diet for me, if I think about food as fuel, as an example, or if I think about food as nutrition, what would be optimal for me to eat? Well, with wearables and AI and all of the things that we've been working on as a society, I'm fairly certain over the next decade, I'll have the ability to understand what's happening in my body after I eat or drink something. And I'll be able to understand that, oh, so you shouldn't have eaten that giant Snickers. Yeah, you probably knew that, but when you actually put math to something and you're able to determine that actually I don't need a cup of coffee, I should have just not eaten that big sugary deal or a big heavy lunch, as an example. I think we're going to have all of those tools available to us, and it will change things for a lot of people. Certainly the Gen Zs, for sure. Then we're looking at how do we think about the planet, and how do we bring innovation that actually creates resiliency and efficiency but that is also good for the planet. You go to the next wave. Really, I've talked about this a little bit, but we built this system for scale, low cost, efficiency, using from the tail to the snout of a hog and everything in between. Sorry, ladies, that is, some of those parts are in your lipstick and makeup, but you'll get over that at some point. But we'll have to figure out how to replace that if the alt protein people are successful, which I'm sure we will. But, really it's about, we built this whole system for scale, and everything that we see today is about personalization, customization. And those are two paradoxes that we will continue to wrestle with. But it's pretty clear to me anyway that personalization is going to win out. And we'll have to figure out how to do that in a cost-effective way, for sure. But I think that'll actually happen. We're looking for more types of protein. And then we want to reduce the carbon footprint. As we all know, current animal production is, at least perceived to be real carbon intensive. It is actually, because of the feed ratios and all the associated stuff with just making animals and the making of the animals the way we like them, which is out of a feedlot after they've eaten a lot of corn, and they're that marbly ribeye steak that we all love and that has a great flavor. There are consequences to that, and that's just the nature of life. Where there's a paradox between science and marketing, if you think about it that way. But, I'm not sure that everybody needs, every free from option that is available, but they sure think they do. And I think that's not going to change. And then there's we are adding a lot of people to the planet. I think we'll have. I think actually, if people that study these things, I think will tell us that this year has actually been a big change in that people adding to the planet factor, not just from people dying at a little higher rate, but actually in the developed. So that will change some of these trend lines. I don't think it'll alter the nearly 10 billion people by 2050, but it might tweak it a bit. I'll be curious to see what that looks like. But so as we think about that, then those things that we see a food and agriculture system in the future that's just more consumer centric rather than producer oriented, where look, we just, from a producer perspective, we produce a whole bunch of ingredients. They get blended together by people in the middle, and we make lots of boxes of macaroni and cheese, and it's cheap, storable, affordable, safe, easily transported. That's what we were solving for when we built this system post World War II. Going forward, that's just not going to be the way it looks. And so these empowered super consumers are going to be demanding just something fundamentally different. And it's going to be way more personal, driven by nutrition. And they're going to want to know a lot more about how and where that product was made. It's very clear that planet friendly is going to be a key component of anything we do going forward. And so, actually, regenerative agriculture 10 years ago was a concept that was so far out that it felt like an extreme cliff. And today, mainstream agriculture is grabbing onto the regenerative agriculture like it's a life preserver. It's very clear that, a planet-friendly approach is going to be really critical. You see the Biden administration talking about, conservation on 30% of our agricultural land. I think it would be interesting to see the details on that, but my personal opinion, it'll be a significant amount of reforestation in that, is my guess. And then, instead of this big disconnected system where these ingredients are made all over the place and they come together, and there's just, people are desiring supply chains to be completely different, where they're just shorter, easier to understand, and they are probably more local. And that's just really different. But that will be enabled by things like, we are able to grow things in a protected culture environment today, and vertical farming. You see Driscoll's and Plenty going together to think about blueberries or other kinds of berries indoors. Man, that's a big change. That's a really meaningful thing. And so I say all that to one, let you know that this is something that is evolving, and it's evolving pretty fast. So as you think about what you're building or inventing or commercializing, or the story, the pitch you're trying to make for capital, et cetera, have an eye on what's coming, because it's not what's in the rearview mirror. What's ahead of us on the road is not what is in the rearview mirror. It's not going to look exactly the same. And depending on what time period you want to pick, it may not look the same at all. So just keep that in mind. And that's the way we're seeing it. And the when is always the tough question. A lot of these things are going to occur over the next decade and a half. It's my personal opinion. I think by 2030, the world will look pretty different. And I'll be very interested to see that. I actually live on a small farm about an hour outside of St. Louis to the west, and grow a lot of specialty crops, and been around agriculture my whole life. and have a lot of affinity for the people of agriculture, and very much in tune with what that look, have a lot of emotion around that. But there's nothing sacred about it. There's nothing holy about it. We are not immune to disruption. People are going to invent things that disrupt what we do, and that's just the way the world works. That's called progress. So, and best I can tell, that's what a lot of you guys have on your mind. So that's very good. I'm recording this because we had a technical glitch yesterday, so we will not have questions and answers unless our tech people want to ask some questions. But I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and would love to do this again if the opportunity exists. Thank you very much.